Good evening.
Hello, this is William, and I'm here on the William Show here on the Ellie Investigator News 2 channel. So, today we have a bunch of news. Since really Thursday, I guess, Israel's expanded its offensive. In case you guys don't know, the truce has fallen apart for exchange of hostages, and so Israel's expanded its offensive across all of Gaza, including to the south. Now, if you are in Gaza, you probably don't want to hear this. I suggest, if you care at all for your safety and for the safety of your children, cross the border into Egypt and become a refugee temporarily rather than become a victim forever. You can always come back across that border, but if you end up in a crossfire with Hamas, there's no going back from that. So don't let somebody use you as a shield if you can at all help it. Here on Investigator News 2, we care about all people's lives. So we care about Israel's lives and we care about the Palestinian lives. So please be cognizant of that. I come from a military background, and I can tell you assuredly that the only way to be safe from weapons fire in a battle zone, which is what Gaza now is to not be there. All right. Now we can move on. Now, according to Speaker Johnson, Hunter was sending money from his business account to his father's account. And so they're saying this is influence peddling on a major scale. So what does that mean? I don't know. But if you want to hear about more of it, I got this information from NTD News.
William, what you're talking about is uh, Hunter Biden didn't have a profession, or he just got it from being his father's son. And so he didn't necessarily have skills, or they were using him productively or business wise. They just gave him the money. That's how I understood it.
Well, the president thought, he had skills because he was writing the check. That's for damn sure. Just saying. Yeah, you're right. Okay. So, we've got a bunch of contenders now for the Republican nomination, and it looks like there's one less person in that crowd. North Dakota's Governor Douglas Burgum has decided to bow out of the race now, and that was according to NTD. It's becoming more understood now that the Ukraine war, for the folks in Congress, it was understood the Ukraine war would be a long and likely a costly war, um, both for resources and for politics. and that right now um, there's a war exhaustion that's starting to happen, because no matter how much money you send or what the politicians are saying, um, wars are uh, looked on in balance, not so much by the resources that are spent or the politics, but rather on victories and defeats uh, on open terrain that's being contested. So there's becoming war exhaustion, and it really doesn't matter which side you're on. Putin's feeling it. Zelensky's feeling it. We're feeling it here in the United States and in Congress. And the longer war goes on, the more it drags down the emotions of people that are supporting it or fighting it. Now, there hasn't been much change in territories for quite a while. We've had reports out this weekend that there's been some Russian soldiers that were poisoned. And then when some Ukrainian soldiers went to surrender, those that were angry about the Russian soldiers being poisoned roughly took out the same amount of Ukrainian soldiers that threw up their hands and surrendered. So that's a bad deal. So we're starting to see that. We'll talk a little bit more here in a little bit about what NATO thinks is going on and how it's affecting them. Unfortunately, wars affect so many different things. Right now in Venezuela, they're trying to get the votes to pass a measure so that they can go after the land of Guyana. Now, Guyana is just a small nation that sits between Brazil and Venezuela, and you probably heard about it. The first time you really remember about it was when they had a cult that moved there, and a whole bunch of people drank poisoned Kool-Aid. They called them. Do you remember what they called that group, Belly? Back in
the Jonestown murders.
Yeah, the Jim Jones.
Jim Jones people, yeah. Whatever. Calvary.
We had some congressmen went down to check out the Jones thing, and they lost. A couple congressmen lost their lives trying to find out what was going on there. Since then, Guyana has been fairly stable as far as its country and its military. And if you know about any of the European Union Space Agency, they launched a lot of their rockets out of Guyana. They call it French Guyana because, it was once a French colony. So Venezuela wants to take it because they're looking at the offshore oil. They've had a long-standing dispute over those oil fields, and they're feeling like, they're not making enough money, and if they could get those oil fields, it would be, a stimulus into the Venezuelan economy. Well, here's the thing. Venezuela has more oil than any other country on the planet. More than Saudi Arabia, more than any other country. And they've been feckless in the way they've used their oil profits, and by nationalizing their oil production, they've killed their business. And so rather than fix their own business, rather than modify their own behavior, they want to take somebody else's behavior. Now, the people in Guyana are very concerned, especially considering we have this destabilizing things going on in Ukraine and now Israel, and what we've seen between China and Taiwan. So they're very concerned that with things being destabilized on the planet, that Venezuela might become adventurous and come seize power over their country. And they're doing much better than Venezuela. So there's that. So Iran's military strategy and power projection, they want to drive out the United States out of the Middle East. And if they can do that, they feel like they can drive Israel out as well. And how are they using their military power projection strategy? And how are they doing it? They're using proxies. So broken nation states, basically, where they can find factions that they can train and arm to attack the people that Iran dislikes. And they're using drones and their military production, even though they're under sanctions. And when we allow money to go in to Iran and into Yemen, we're basically funding military production in those countries. So we need to stop doing that the best we can. Now, Iran's force structure, they use their force structure and overarching strategy that stands out. And they're using weapons from the Shah's era and a bunch of new weapons generated, like missiles and drones that they're selling to both Russia, and they're exporting basically the recipes to make weapons into these other countries. And like well, that's that. Now, the military in Iran has a lot of capabilities and limitations, okay? And they're based on their industrial base. But they're able to create a radical amount of their wealth sent to the military because they have the support of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And if there's any friction that causes within Iran, they'll use the Revolutionary Guard to go and weed those people out and stop any dissent going on in their country. And right now, you know, we've had a grab of some land in Armenia, and currently it hasn't been Turkey that's filled that vacuum. Turns out that Iran's filling that vacuum. Many of the Armenians are Christians, and so they're not loved by the Iranians. Also in Africa, we had some Islam militant fighters that went into a village and killed 40 Christian villagers. I'll be able to get more information on that to you on Wednesday, where that is. Now, according to Jake Sullivan, the vote against Ukraine aid will hurt democracy and help dictators. So my question is, how are we going to be able to continue aid to Ukraine while at the same time we're killing our own economy? So like Senator Kerry, former Senator Kerry, and currently the climate czar, he's now come out and COP28, and they're trying to hush it up right now, but he came out against all coal power. He believes coal power must be a thing of the past. Now, if you have everything that you need on the electric grid, there's solar and wind turbine is, I believe it's less than 10%, and nuclear is only another 30%, so that leaves 60% under coal. And he now wants no coal, they want no gas stove, and I assume that's going to go towards gas heaters as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Gas.
they want to reduce oil consumption. Now, an economy runs on energy. And if you're going to supply other nations, if you're going to be the arsenal of democracy, which is what we're being right now by sending our money and equipment to Ukraine, we're doing that under the aegis of the arsenal of democracy, just like we sent money to England during World War II so it could survive. And later on, we sent money to Russia so it could stay in the fight against the Germans, the Nazis. When I say Germans, I mean the Nazi party. Germans, for the most part, just had to go along because they had no other choice. But we had to fight against them. Now, at the same time, we're looking at Ukraine, and we're seeing that Zelensky is becoming increasingly authoritarian.
William, you know that
Yeah.
the Biden administration plans to buy 2.7 million oil barrels to refill our emergency stockpile. Did you hear about that one? Since we're talking about oil.
Where does he plan to buy it from?
Let me see if I can pull this up real quick.
We need to replace that
Yeah, we
entire
do.
amount he took out of the strategic oil reserve. That wasn't, it's not there to just curb prices at the gas pump. It's there as a resource. Our military runs on oil. We have aircraft carriers and we have submarines that are nuclear powered, but all of our destroyers that protect those ships, all of our frigates, all of our cruisers, they all run on oil. All of our aircraft run on oil. Our tanks run on oil. Our APCs run on oil. Literally, an army runs on its stomach, and it gets what it needs delivered with fuel oil, with fuel oil means. So, to be able to prosecute war and to be able to go to a war footing in a nation, which is what they're saying basically, if we're going to continue supporting Ukraine at the rate we are, we have to increase our manufacturing. And the only way to increase manufacturing is we have to go to an emergency resolution testing on the equipment that is made, because it will be tested by the troops in the field. They don't have time to go through the endless cycle of proof testing everything. They just test a portion and they send everything out to the field. The mechanics and the users in the fields will determine very quickly if there's a problem with it. If they're starting to detect a problem, they send it back. They get another tranche of weapons, and hopefully those work. And that's what happens when you're under a war footing. And weapons being, 100% functional, we can do that under the peace dividend when we're manufacturing it, because we have the luxury of time. But now that we're using so many weapons at such clip, that's becoming less and less viable. Just like we're using more and more of our troops, their duty cycle is going up, so they're being used more, and we're having, accidents sometimes because of that. We're having, it's rough on families, it's rough on individuals, and yeah, it is what it is. Now, on the things going on in Israel, back to Gaza, Hamas, according to some people who have gone out and checked to see who's in favor and who's not of this war. Hamas and the people of God do not want a two-state solution. So it's going to come out to one or the other. Either Hamas is going to have their state, or Israel's going to have their state. But the two of them can't live together. That's obvious, right? And so this is bringing us to a bad position. We've seen this in Ukraine as well, when there's a contest of ideas about what belongs to who. Now, there's always this argument that, well, whoever was there initially, this should be their land, but all lands are colonized. Now, not like the European colonialization, but colonized by individuals. America is colonized by individuals. Look at Europe right now with a lot of the strife they're having with Muslims. Those are people that have colonized Europe, right? It's just the nature of the beast. And we're going to have to get this to work out in the UN and the court at The Hague. But that's going to be down the road. Right now, a war has broken out. Once war breaks out, The Hague and the United Nations has very little leverage. And I want to go on to another little piece of data I found. Anyway, it says that 1.3 million Americans believe that it's okay for Hamas to use rape and torture as a part of warfare. Now, that's out of 3.5 million Muslim adherents here in the United States. So out of 3.5, roughly a third believe that it's okay for Hamas to have been engaging in war atrocities. All right. Now, according to Mitch McConnell, time is running out, and he's imploring. These words like implore and what's another one they use? ingenuousness. We need to quit this whole implore and just call people out to their face and say, look, this is the deal, right? Make it plain. Just like disingenuous, look, that's a lie. But they don't want to do that under, I guess, the Queen's rules of I forgot the name of that. You know, when you're in high school, debate, rules of debate. So he's saying that they need to work on the border security. I can't even read my own writing there. Anyway, systems. And looking at this border security here in the United States, you know, when we went to World War in World War II, there was no FBI, there was no CIA, there was no Homeland Security. Our border security fell under the aegis of Department of Defense. Back then we called it the Department of War. Okay? And the border guards and were just a land version of the Coast Guard, right? So you have the Coast Guard on the water, you have border security on the borders. They all came under the War Department, even though because of posse comitatus, you can't have military functioning within the United States, right, without direct orders and a declaration of war and an emergency declaration. Those were still civilian, quasi-civilian agencies. They didn't have the full military powers. Okay, but they fell under the department, the War Department. Now, right now we have border security, and they've moved Coast Guard into Homeland Security. And the backup for border security and Homeland Security is the FBI, and ICE, right? But with this new Homeland Security chief, it takes that role, those powers away from the military, and constitutional responsibility is still held by the military, but it's being acted upon by the president and his civilian organizations. And so there's a divide between civilian and military and how they want to deal with that. And it gives cover to the president. Now, if there was not this Homeland Security thing, if there wasn't this these other agencies that stand in the way of direct action of power, then the president or the Pentagon could immediately be held responsible, and an impeachment could occur, or people could lose their jobs in the Department of Defense, right? They'd cut their paycheck. Well, that can't happen right now. It takes, they have to go through impeachment proceedings. You got to go through all that. And then you have to step through each of these individuals that have violated their constitutional oaths before you can get to the president. So the presidency has insulated itself from its own responsibilities and the actions of the deep state. Now this is becoming a problem we're seeing here on Capitol Hill. They looked at Mayorkas, they knew he was lying, they could prove he was lying, right? And there's very little they can do about it. By the time they get him impeached, somebody else comes in and they determine that that individual is lying as well. And so what didn't happen to be that it was just Homeland Security is a problem, but actually the presidency, that can't happen in the next year. And the Republicans know that. So this is an insulating way that, you know, governments work on plausible deniability. Not deniability, but plausible deniability. And if you can get away with that question in people's minds, well, is it or isn't it the case, then you can hold action and reforms within a government for quite a period of time. So I believe that's why actually the FBI and CIA was created. And now we have, after 9/11, added to that Homeland Security that ties the other 17 intelligence agencies, all doing their own specific job based on the directives of Congress and the president. Okay, they're not sitting out there wasting money, but there is a little bit of turf war between them. But we can see the Homeland Security is a complete and utter failure with respect to our southern border. So it was a good idea, you know, under a Republican administration, but just because it functions under a Republican administration doesn't mean an agency will function under a Democratic administration. So I think our congressmen really need to look at the secret court so that they can get warrants to look at people within the United States, all right, by the FBI. They're not supposed to be looking for what's about to happen to people do. They're supposed to be looking at what people have done that's incongruent with the Constitution and our laws. But they're looking more and more towards thought crimes. Well, are they planning to do this? For instance, there's a prepper guy, and he was an influencer on the internet. He was just shot over the weekend. Well, they thought because it had gone off the air, it had stopped producing videos, that, because that's one of the things that happens before there's an attack or an assault, is people tend to go quiet on the internet. Well, he was just having some family problems, and, you know, the FBI showed up, and the state showed up, and the man lost his life. And we've also had, let me see how that went. Well, I'll get the information. I believe it was a religious issue. Another man lost his life to law enforcement that had done nothing wrong. They may have talked about things, but they had done nothing. And, you know, there it is. Now, Bob Iger at Disney and Elon Musk at X, it used to be Twitter, are throwing word bombs at each other. I don't know how to call it any other way, but that's happening, and because Disney pulled back and got a lot of the advertising to leave X, Bob Iger believes that he can force Musk into acting more the way that think they've just run into Elon. He tends to believe what he believes. Now, so Biden's getting some more bad news from the electorate, and they're tending more towards conservatism. Now, actually, that's not what's happened. What's happened is there were a group of Democrats that were liberal, but not super liberal. And now that the administration has gone super liberal, like we can't have any carbon, you know, get rid of meat, get rid of cars, get rid of everything, which basically means get rid of us, because that's how we survive. We live off oil in one way or another, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's machinery that does the work in the fields. We can't do the manufacturing and all the mechanical things that makes us a world power if we're spending all of our time on the farms. So we need both mechanization on the farms and we need mechanization in the cities. So, yeah, so the climate change group is looking more and more extreme. And John Kerry keeps doubling down on getting rid of all forms of carbon. You know, when we breathe in oxygen and give off carbon. Now they're saying that animals, farm animals that do the same thing, right? We have to get rid of them because of the carbon. Well, they're saying in a roundabout way, they need to get rid of us. And we just had a big blow up with Larry Johnson. No, I'm sorry. There was a dust up over the need for this AI and having cyber life. Now, initially, when the internet and computers started, they had viruses. So you could create a virus, right? Give it instructions, send it out on the web. It would secretly make its way into machines and the internet, spread around, and replicate itself. Well, that's what life does, is it's self-replicating. And once you let it go, it can survive on its own. It doesn't need you anymore, right? Well, the argument that Elon was having and this other guy from big tech was that human life isn't any more important than cyber life. So basically, life is life. It doesn't matter if you have blood or not. And so this is part of the Green Clue, or this Green New Deal. And this is why I call it a cult, because no matter what you say, no matter what evidence flies in your face, right? No matter how it would impact your citizens, regardless of everything else that's going on in the world, the need to arm your allies, none of that matters in the face of this climate cult. This is exactly what happens in a cult, is they can't look at empirical evidence. They stay with their own beliefs regardless. And so this is part of a technological bankers went through the whole thing the same way. We can control the money, so we must be smarter, so we must be smarter than all the rest. I'm sure Ford went through that, and whoever started Chevrolet went through that. Of course, coal, oil, railroads. We've always gone through this. But this last time, they want to get rid of religion because they say you can't prove religion, but you can prove mathematics, right? And so their religion is more viable than our religion, and so we need to be pushed aside, or their technocracy won't be able to function on its own. So yeah, that's going on. Now, according to Larry Johnson on Judge Napolitano's show, Judging Freedom, NATO has admitted that Ukraine is on the brink of failure, and that they have to get their public ready for some bad news. Okay, so that's Ukraine. And now shifting back over to the Red Sea and Yemen, they were firing some missiles that fell short. Well, again on Sunday they fired more missiles, 3 of them, at one of our destroyers, and the destroyer shot all 3 down. But according to Leon Panetta, now Leon Panetta was part of Department of Defense and also part of the White House during Obama, and during, I believe, even during, for a short time, Trump, or it may have been Bush. But he's saying that we have to go on the offensive against these missile attacks of our troops. We can't just give them the least amount of damage we can do and still hurt them. We have to go, whoever fires those missiles needs to know the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to be dead. So he's come out and he was saying that on Fox News. So that's a big deal. So he's saying the rules of engagement, typically the rules of engagement are, if you're fired upon, you have the right to self-defense. Otherwise, it requires presidential authorization as part of the rules of engagement. So there's this guy by the name of Shapiro, and he's slamming our government. Yeah, Shapiro. Anyway, he's slamming pro-Palestinian mobs that gathered at a falafel restaurant in Philadelphia and causing people and the owners to run and hide, run for their lives. And I saw pictures of one of the people that came in from that mob, and yeah, he was carrying an AK-47. So, we can go ahead and protest, but when it comes down to brandishing weapons and hurting people and property, you don't have a right to do that. You have a right to speak your mind, but it doesn't mean you have a right to hurt, maim, and destroy nice things. Okay.
William, out of Texas, oh boy, I'll pull it back up. Governor Abbott, I'm going to quote this. Let's see.
Well, it basically said if the United States fails to live up to its responsibility to protect the border, Texas has the right to protect its own border.
Right. And it says every peace officer in the state of Texas to arrest illegal immigrants. That's what it says. So that's good news.
Just because they're a court date doesn't mean they can't be held.
That's right.
Okay, so from what I can gather from the news I saw this weekend, and I just keep watching it continually. I'm a news junkie.
Me too.
Israel is really devastating Hamas right now. And in Hamas, they found Houthi and Hezbollah fighters on the Gaza Strip. So now, Israel's concerned that the United States won't respond forcefully enough if their ships are attacked on the high seas. And also, there have been general commerce vessels that have been fired on as well. And they're concerned that the U.S. isn't being forceful enough with these bad actors that are impeding trade in international waters. Now, according to the IDF, we know we've been getting hostages back, but we also now know that we've had 6 hostages that have been executed after they were taken and they were in captivity. One of them was a farmer, another was a rancher, and a third one that they talked about was a kindergarten teacher. So that's going on. Murder of captives. That's a violation of the Geneva Convention. If you consider the people you take custody of as a threat to your community, as combatants, you have to treat them as such. You don't have the right to mistreat them. That's a war crime. That's a major war crime. Okay. Wow. Time is flying. Vice President Harris has said there's too many innocent Palestinians that have been killed in Gaza. Now, I could just excoriate her for that, but the truth is there's too many Palestinians that are being killed in Gaza because it's so hard to get to the Hamas, because the people in Gaza are being used as meat shields, because they know the United States and Israel are reluctant to attack areas where there's schools, where there's hospitals, where there's refugee camps. So they've used those places as a place to make the centers of their military. And so, yeah, I agree with her. We shouldn't have to be killing innocent people in Gaza. And that there's been too many innocent lives that have been lost. But this is a war, and as long as Hamas uses the Gazan people as a shield, they're responsible for the losses, not Israel's. Israel was attacked. Israel must go in and stop Hamas so they won't be attacked again. That was a cross-border raid. That wasn't just a little terrorist raid. That was a military raid, land, sea, and air. So, here's the deal. That's not Israel's responsibility that these civilians are being killed. They have been very judicious in the weapons they've used and employing them and trying to use them out of harm's way of civilians. But you can't protect civilians in a battle zone. It's an impossibility. Even if a bomb isn't dropped and a structure doesn't fall on them, they'll be caught in the crossfire between troops coming in and troops trying to hold those positions. If you find yourself in a battle zone, do yourself a favor and leave. You can always come back. You'll at least have your life. Okay. So, although I agree with Vice President Harris, I'm not sure we agree on the root reason. Now, Kerry's our climate czar, and he's at COP28 right now in the Middle East. And there's come up this report again that John Kerry had detailed covert operations information about Israel that he handed over to Iran. And remember, when Trump was in office, Kerry was over in Iran a lot. He was basically getting involved. I think it's the Hatch Act that he shouldn't have been. And this is what happens when you have zealots. They, even though it's supposed to be a new administration, they don't ever want to leave office. They don't ever want to keep doing their deeds. Okay, their politics, if you will. So, what the argument's being profited around right now, considering that Kerry just came out against all coal used in the world, that perhaps he can't be trusted with that being the climate czar for the president. So yeah, there's that. Now, China's come up with a new weapon. So, if you don't know, there's a big election going on in Taiwan, and it's over who will lead the country and whether that leadership will be towards China or towards the United States, because at this point, Taiwan can't be neutral, right? They're being forced to make a choice. So they're making that choice. At the same time, though, China's saying, if you want to come to China, we'll book you and we'll pay the trip. And I believe they'll pay the round trip. So they're giving people the opportunity to go visit family, go see parts of their culture, all the things that China can offer Taiwan, and at the same time woo citizens away from being able to becoming sympathetic with the Chinese profession that you need to have Taiwan become part of China. So that's a new trick, right? So we got TikTok, and they're getting airfares. I don't think they're going to do airfares in the United States because they're a lot more expensive when you got to go, 8,000 miles instead of 300. Okay, now, while we're on the topic of of Taiwan and the oceans and air power and whatnot. China has gone to the UN and I believe has complained that we had, I think it was the Maddox, a destroyer in international waters going through the South China Sea, and they're saying that that was a violation of their territorial integrity. 500 miles from the coast. That only extends, I believe it's 100 miles. So, yeah. No, so at one point, they're saying that the United Nations laws of the high seas are invalid with respect to them, but at the same time, they want to punish the United States through the laws of the high seas. It's like this oxymoron, round circular thing that can never connect. It's like, I don't know. There's a number of things that the human mind does that is not actually true, like Monday morning quarterbacking, because if this player had done something, another player had done something else, they would have won for sure. But there could have been some other intervening events, from somebody tripping to the ball going flat or whatever. So that's a fallacy of reasoning. And China really likes to engage in these fallacies of reasoning, especially when it comes to laws or anything that basically gets them something for free. All right. Yeah, Lebanon. They've had children out chanting in the streets that Israel needs to be pushed out from the river to the sea, and that they're saying it's martyrdom for the kids that are dying in Gaza. They're being martyred. So yeah, there's that. Paris, they had a terrorist attack. Some people lost their lives. They tried to take down the Eiffel Tower. Turns out it was a Franco-Iranian citizen born in the country. Mom or dad was from Iran. The other was from France. They go to France to go to school. The Shah loses power. The Ayatollah goes from France back over to Iran. Suddenly they can't go back home. They're going to school. They get married. They have a child, right? And he got involved with Islam, right? And he was radicalized and attacked his own country. And I could go through his name, but it doesn't really matter. He changed his name to a more Islamic name from Ayman, and his last name to Ahmed Rajapour. It's a long Islamic name. So that happened. And I guess he started getting radicalized around 2003. Trying to get my papers. I think that's about it, Ellie, for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I got all my stuff done. I think it took me, a few minutes. So there was plenty of material. I'll be able to get you more information on the Africans that were killed from an armed incident that had to do with economic and religious reasons. Okay, so please come again. I'll be here Monday again, and I'll be with Ellie
Wednesday,
and Ellie will be here tomorrow with her
news.
shows.
Yep, news and
And
that big
news.
7.0 earthquake. I'll talk about that tomorrow.
Okay, so we've got some earthquakes going on. This continued destabilization. So we're just watching power dynamics. If there's not, if you have a family and everybody's all equal, can you imagine the bickering that's going on to keep the family together? Somebody has to be in charge. There has to be one chief and the rest be Indians, or it becomes chaos, right? There has to be somebody that's the last word in any argument. Well, we don't have that last word in any argument right now in the world. And so we're seeing all these places evolving into warfare. And so people that think at one point that if we're friends with everybody, if we involve with diplomacy and we stay away from military action, that the world will be a safer place. They're getting people killed by the dozens, the hundreds and the thousands because of these destabilizations. We had the same thing happen with Kissinger. He just passed. Now, was Kissinger a good guy or was he a bad guy? Yep. He was both.
Mm-hmm.
He was good at clawing China away from the Russians while we were in a war. Masterstroke. But China decided to engage in a massive restructuring and industrialization of their economy, and of course, millions died. So, even though you have good intentions, like McNamara had good intentions, they end up with a lot of blood on their hands because somebody doesn't stand up and say, this is a line, you can't cross it any farther, or we'll bring our full weight upon you, which equates to immediate destruction. If they think they can get away with it, they'll try it. They're just like children. If you look at politics, it's the same politics that happens in the kindergarten room. There needs to be a teacher. Okay. Well, I've said enough, Ellie. I hope everybody has a good day, the rest of the day. Here in the Northwest, we've got a river of moisture coming in through California, Oregon, and Washington, and we're getting wet, we're getting snowed on, and we're having a damp good time. And we hope you guys all have good weather wherever you're at. And, fly safe, be safe, love your families, try to stay out of arguments because, wars start out with one argument and just keep spreading. If we could just avoid the argument in the first place, we wouldn't have to use military power as often. So, okay.
Subscribe
bring this to you. Thanks for coming.
Subscribe and
Thanks,
hit the bell and share and follow. And we'll see you all tomorrow, right, William?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want me to.
All right. Okay, William. Get some rest. All right. Bye-bye.